The Winter War was a conflict between Finland and the Soviet Union from November 1939 to March 1940. It took place during the height of the Cold War, when the Soviets had just annexed parts of Poland and were in an aggressive mood. They wanted to buffer their borders against potential future threats. They saw Finnish territory as a perfect location for it. So in typical Soviet fashion, they offered Finland a deal that they simply couldn't refuse. That being a demand for territory which, if refused, would result in the use of military force. And so, the unprepared Finns found themselves at war with one of the world's most powerful nations. But even though they lost the war, they didn't go down without a fight. In fact, the Finns put up such a determined defense that it surprised the Soviets and many military experts today still praise the Finns' fighting spirit. Now let's go back to November 1939, right before the war began. The Soviet leader Joseph Stalin wasn't satisfied with his country's security situation. He feared a future attack by Germany, and he wanted to get rid of the possibility of a Finnish invasion of Leningrad, or St. Petersburg, as the city was called back then. To eliminate this potential threat, Stalin demanded that Finland cede territory near Leningrad. The Finnish government rejected these demands, and on November, the Soviets attacked. Their plan was to take the Finnish defenses by storm. They used tanks, artillery, and infantry to push the Finns back. However, they soon realized that it wouldn't be as easy as they thought. The Finnish troops fought bravely, and the terrain didn't help the Soviets either. You see, Finland is a winter wonderland, and not just your run-of-the-mill light winter with some snow here and there. No, this is a real frozen wasteland where temperatures can plummet to as low as -40 degrees Fahrenheit or -40 degrees Celsius. And let me tell you, those tanks and trucks aren't exactly designed to handle that kind of weather. Plus, all the water pipes froze solid, making it impossible for the soldiers to get fresh water. And don't forget about the snow. It was knee-deep in some places, slowing the tanks down and making it easier for the Finnish troops to hide in the snowdrifts and launch surprise attacks. Despite all these setbacks, the Soviets continued their attack. They pushed the Finns back little by little, but it was a costly victory. For every mile they gained, they lost dozens of men to freezing or Finnish bullets. Meanwhile, the Finnish people were rallying together to fight the invaders. Women, children, and old men joined the military effort. They made Molotov cocktails to throw at the Soviet tanks. And when the war ended, more than 260,000 Finnish citizens had served in the army. As the war dragged on, the Soviets realized they needed to change their tactics. They brought in more tanks and artillery, and they started using the scorched earth tactic. This involved burning crops and destroying villages as they retreated, hoping to make the war-torn country inhospitable for the Finns. The Soviets also tried to cut off Finland's supply of food and medicine, hoping to starve out the population. But the Finns were prepared for this. They had stockpiled food and supplies, and they used their knowledge of the forest to stay hidden from the Soviets. In January 1940, the Soviets made one final push. They sent in thousands of troops and hundreds of tanks to capture the Mannerheim Line. This was a defensive line that the Finns had built across the country. It was designed to prevent the Soviets from taking Helsinki. The battle for the Mannerheim Line was the largest and most intense battle of the war. It lasted for 2 weeks, and it was only after the Soviets brought in reinforcements that the Finns were forced to retreat. On March, the Soviets finally captured Helsinki. The Finnish government sued for peace, and the war was over. The Finns had lost 9% of their territory, but they had also gained the respect of the world. The Finnish soldiers had shown that even the most powerful army in the world could be defeated if they were willing to fight hard enough. The Winter War was a true testament to the power of the human spirit. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the Finnish soldiers fought back against the Soviet invaders. They used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, launching surprise attacks and ambushes that caught the Soviets off guard. The Finns also showed incredible bravery and determination. They refused to give up despite being outnumbered and outgunned. They knew that if they lost the war, their country would be no more, and they were willing to fight to the last man to prevent that from happening. The Winter War was not just a military conflict. It was a war of national survival. The Finns were fighting for their very existence, and they were determined to win. They had a strong sense of unity and purpose, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to achieve their goals. The Finnish soldiers were also incredibly resourceful. They made the most of what they had, using makeshift weapons and tactics to take on the Soviet war machine. They were able to hold off the Soviets for as long as they did, because of their ingenuity and willingness to improvise. The Winter War was ultimately a lost cause for the Finns. They were no match for the Soviet war machine, and they were eventually forced to surrender. But they had gained the respect of the world for their courage and determination. The Finnish soldiers had shown that even the most powerful army in the world could be defeated if they were willing to fight hard enough. But the Winter War was more than just a military conflict. It was a war of national survival. The Finns were fighting for their very existence, and they were determined to win. They had a strong sense of unity and purpose, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to achieve their goals. The Finnish soldiers were also incredibly resourceful. They made the most of what they had, using makeshift weapons and tactics to take on the Soviet war machine. They were able to hold off the Soviets for as long as they did, because of their ingenuity and willingness to improvise. The legacy of the Winter War lives on in Finland today. The Finnish people are proud of their country's history, and they remember the bravery of those who fought in the Winter War. The war is considered to be one of the most important events in Finnish history, and it has had a lasting impact on the country's culture and identity. The Finnish army is still known for its bravery and skill, and the Winter War is a source of national pride for the Finnish people. But the Winter War was not just a Finnish story. It was a story of courage and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a story that captured the attention of the world and inspired people everywhere. The bravery of the Finnish soldiers continues to be celebrated today, and the Winter War is remembered as one of the most epic battles of all time. The Finnish soldiers were incredibly brave. They faced the Soviet war machine with little more than determination and makeshift weapons. They knew that they were outgunned and outnumbered, but they were willing to risk their lives to defend their country. The Finns fought with honor and dignity, and they never gave up hope. Even when the odds were stacked against them, they kept fighting for their homeland. One of the most inspiring stories from the Winter War is the tale of the Snow Battalion. This group of Finnish soldiers was made up of conscripts who had little military training. But when their country needed them, they answered the call. The Snow Battalion was tasked with defending a key part of the Mannerheim Line. They were surrounded by enemy troops, and they were constantly being attacked, but they held their ground. The soldiers were exhausted and hungry, but they were determined to defend their country. They fought with rifles, Molotov cocktails, and even snowshoes. They were eventually relieved, but not before they had become heroes of the Winter War. Another amazing aspect of the Winter War was the role of women. Finnish women were not just homemakers. They were active participants in the war effort. They served as nurses, drivers, and even snipers. One of the most famous Finnish snipers was Simo Häyhä, who was known as White Death by the Soviets. She was a skilled marksman, and she played a key role in the Finnish victory. The Winter War was a clash of ideologies, as well as a military conflict. The Finns were fighting for their freedom and independence. While the Soviets were trying to impose communism on their country, the war was brutal, and there were atrocities committed by both sides. But the Finnish soldiers were able to stay true to their values, even in the face of overwhelming odds. They fought with honor and dignity, and they never gave up hope. The Winter War is a reminder that even the most powerful army in the world can be defeated if they face a determined and resourceful enemy. It's a testament to the power of the human spirit and the courage of those who fight for their country and their beliefs. The Finnish soldiers who fought in the Winter War were true heroes. They faced overwhelming odds and fought with honor and dignity. Their bravery and determination continue to inspire us today, and we should remember their sacrifice and their courage. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today's episode. But if you want to learn more about the Winter War, check out the additional resources provided. Until next time, stay curious.